Hey guys, welcome to CrimeCon Debrief Part 2 with our special guest Stephanie. Stephanie, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. Excited to
Um,
go on to part two.
okay. No migraine. Is your migraine gone?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good right now. They come and
Okay.
go, so
I went to a birthday dinner yesterday and my girlfriend had a migraine then, and she's had it right through the day today. She actually went to hospital to get an injection to get rid of it. So that's how bad it was.
okay. Sorry, my son's already asking me for something. It's
Oh,
okay.
okay.
All right, I
So
think
let's
he's good.
just say hi to our members. By the way, guys out there in YouTube land, how's the sound? Is the sound better than last time? No echo?
Do
Karen
I echo?
Sanderson from Wisconsin, good to see you. Pauline
Usually,
Buckles, good to see you as well. Yeah, Stephanie is looking good, right?
it was dreary here this morning, so I'm wearing little suns.
Okay, so Robbie says great sound. Mel Stiller says it's good here, so that's good.
Okay,
I see
hopefully that's what
Nisi
it is.
is our mod, so good to have you in the house, Mel Stiller. Um, Nick is loud, Stephanie is quiet.
I turned up my volume. Is this better?
I can hear you fine.
Is this better?
Stargirl,
Otherwise, I'll just try to project my voice. Okay, I'm gonna turn up the volume a little more. You might want to turn it down on your end then, Nick.
I can hear you fine. You're a little
Okay.
bit soft, but it's fine. Okay, so in this debrief part 2, we're going to sort of talk about the Laurie Vallow case, and I'm just going to sort of hand it over to Stephanie. You watched the grandparents essentially of JJ. What did they say? Who spoke to them? What things were sort of surprising to you? And thanks very much for preparing your script and so on. I
You're
think
welcome.
you've done a great job taking notes and then also typing them out. So thanks very much for that.
You're welcome. So I know I'll read from my notes. If you want to interject at any time, please do. Also, I'll occasionally glance over at the chat. I have the chat on my phone, so if I'm looking, like glancing down, that's what I'm looking at. I'm glad that it's way better than last time. Okay. So this is going to be, it's called Where Are the Children? And it's an interview that Nate Eaton does with Kay and Larry Woodcock, the grandparents of JJ Vallow. And I noted that I didn't get to see this session live. I mentioned in our last part 1 of my experience that I chose to go to the Ramsey session, so I missed out on this one. So that was unfortunate, but I did buy a subscription so I could go home and watch all the sessions that I missed. So I have been busy with that as well. What I can tell you is I didn't meet Kay and Larry, but as I was leaving one of the sessions, I turned around and they were behind me. And I mean, they were walking to wherever they needed to be at, but I glanced over and it was an emotional sighting. Kay was dressed very nicely. She looked like she had, a business that she wanted to attend, to get to. And then her husband, Larry, I noticed I'm trying to think how old he is now, because he was 65, he said, when JJ was brought to their home as an infant. And JJ died when he was 7. So then what, that's 72,
Yeah.
right? So he was
So he's now about 74, maybe.
Oh,
73,
right. So 50
74.
years passed. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so he was on a little scooter and he was scooting behind me, and I don't know why I was surprised by that, but it just made me realize the age of how old they are and what they're going through as their, you know, life would have it. You would want to be enjoying your grandchildren and grandbabies. So it's just a little bit sad.
So
What else?
I'm not sure if I understood. Are you saying Larry was on a scooter?
Yeah, he was like on like a little scooter, meaning like he wasn't walking.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
Like
Oh, okay. So
an
almost
elderly
like
man. And they
okay. I
not a
almost
scooter
thought
like
it's I was almost like, was he on JJ's scooter? Like, was that
no, that would be he'd be like superhuman. Yeah.
okay.
And then what I can tell you from watching the session as I was taking notes, it's not surprising, but the audience was emotional. They were very engaged, and it was hard to watch because you could see Larry wears his heart on his sleeve, and you'll get to see that in some of his responses. And Kay is more of the pull it together, get it, the outwardly stronger. Doesn't mean that she's doing well, but she seems to be the one that's stronger when you see the both of them together, as far as emotionally able to hold it together.
If you take the John Ramsey sort of presentation, which we sort of spoke about in the first debrief, there's quite a weird, and not in a good way, there's quite a weird full circle in a little girl dies and it's sort of unresolved, right? And I'm not saying there weren't any missing children or crimes in between there, but I'm just saying in terms of CrimeCon, you have John Benet Ramsey 25 years ago, and now you have this other big high-profile case, and now it's not one little girl, it's a little boy and his sister, and the wife of somebody else, and also the sort of father. You know what I mean? It's like, wow, where does the toll of casualties end? I'm just saying, it's like John Benet Ramsey is almost like almost like innocence lost in true crime, and Laurie Vallow is like way beyond innocence lost. It's like we've gone into the darkness, like completely. Do you know what I mean? There's just a bit of a feeling of that in terms of the scale of the one compared to the scope of the other.
Yeah. CrimeCon is also it goes to London, I think in 2 weeks it'll be in London. And then I don't know if they have them all over the world or not, but I know they have them in London and they have them all over the United States.
Isn't there supposed to be one in Glasgow, or was there already one in Glasgow?
Yeah, so England, right? Is that I don't even
know. Well, that's Scotland, yeah.
Oh, Scotland. They do crime cruises, so you can.
Oh, really?
Yeah, go on a cruise. There's one. Is it in July? I can't remember. There's one in July. I forget where it goes though. Actually, I could tell you. It goes to Miami to Cozumel. Cozumel. I don't know how to say it.
Oh, okay.
Aboard the Royal Caribbean's Oasis of the Seas. So they have all different.
Do they have a crime cruise to the Mediterranean, like from the Algarve to Peru, not Perugia, but that the closest port to Perugia, perhaps?
Yeah. This is actually their 5th year of in-person CrimeCon only. So it's not like it's been going on forever. It's something sort of newer.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to start with Nate's interview with the Woodcocks, and I took a little bit of notes of things they said, not in their own voices, but just more my note taking. When they say something,
Okay.
I'll let you know. I'm too soft and distorted. All right, I'm going to turn my mic up loud, as loud as it can go. Is that better? All right, I'm gonna get started. Sorry about that, Spirit. Okay.
I'm going to turn my mic off. Maybe that'll help. I don't know why I'm so loud. If you turn your cell phone volume down, does that make you less loud?
I'm not sure. I'm using my cell phone with no volume. It's on mute, and I'm using my laptop for StreamYard. It could just
Okay.
be that my computer is not as good quality as yours. That's probably what it is.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway, sorry about that, guys. Can you just turn your volumes up? Hopefully that'll help.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's weird. The last week it was echo, and now it's too loud or too soft. It's like you can't win, you know?
Yeah, it's frustrating. I don't know what to do. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to mute myself and maybe that'll help. And then, guys, turn the volume up. That will make Stephanie, the right audio quality for you. So I'm going to mute myself.
Okay. When Lori appeared in court just a few weeks ago, Kay noted she appeared not as smug. Larry saw signs of worry and concern in her face for the first time. Larry said how much Lori initially had cared for JJ. We remember first meeting Lori, and now, and all that we've gone through. Nate chimes in. He says, Lori is currently charged with 7 felonies. And I went back to remind myself exactly what those are. So the first count was the conspiracy to commit murder of Tylee. The second count was first-degree murder charge of Tylee. The third was conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of JJ Vallow. The fourth was the first-degree murder charge in the killing of JJ Vallow. Chad has conspiracy to commit first-degree murder in the death of Tammy Daybell, and so does Lori. And Chad also has count 6 first-degree murder in the killing of his then-wife, Tammy. Lori has grand theft felony to collect Social Security benefits for a child in her care for both children. Chad committed insurance fraud with 2 different insurance companies after his then-wife passed, Tamra Daybell. And Lori was charged with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder in the death of Charles. So those are a lot of charges, a lot. Nate asked right off the bat, do you want the death penalty for Lori? And Kay says, we think that's what's going to happen, and that's what we're hoping for. And in an audience Q&A, which I'll read next, Larry shares his point of view more in depth on that. Kay discovered Lori had bought a wedding ring while Tammy was still alive, and she had alerted the police about it. I know that Lori had purchased the ring. I remember it was kind of inexpensive. It was using Charles's account. And when Kay was going through Charles's things, she noticed it on the statement. I didn't realize it was her who had actually shared that with the police. That was just something that I learned.
So, Stephanie, what I think is quite interesting with that, Kay discovering that Lori had bought a wedding ring while Tammy's still alive is, isn't one of the sort of most serious crimes if you a Mormon or LDS, isn't it adultery? Isn't that like the second worst possible crime?
Okay, sorry, I'd muted myself. I don't know too much about the Mormon faith, but I do know that it's one of the sins, right?
Yeah, because I wrote a couple of books on Jodi Arias, and I seem to remember, I'm not sure if it's sex before marriage or adultery, but I think isn't murder, I'm not sure who would know this. Let's maybe have a look at chat. Is murder like the worst sin, and then after that it's adultery? Like is adultery the second worst sin? Anybody know about that?
Nisi says yes in Mormon faith.
Okay. So anyway, whatever it is, adultery is pretty forbidden. And so, yeah, you actually have two sort of divine figures, kind of almost like they're either handpicked by God or handpicked by themselves to be God's representatives, whatever it is. And yeah, they are actually committing adultery. And it's like, but that's okay because we gods. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, the rules are X, Y, and Z, but we are gods, so we can kind of break the rules, so it's fine. It's kind of ironic, you know. And so when you have that kind of license, I guess the world's your oyster. You can pick and choose which laws and things apply to everybody else, and of course, what applies to you, kind of thing. It's just an interesting way that, because we've been talking quite a lot lately about making up reality as you go along, and it's quite an interesting example of that, where it's like, well, the reality is there's this rule, and you are operating within this particular faith, within this particular construct, and it's so important, except you're just ignoring this rule, conveniently ignoring it, you know. And that would actually be quite interesting if you had to speak to Lori and if you had to speak to Chad, which one kind of said, nah, you don't have to worry about it. We were married a long time ago. In fact, we've been married all along. We've just got to make it official. You know what I mean? Like, we've lived so many lives and we've been married all along. So, don't worry about that. I wonder who came up with that story, you know?
Wasn't it Chad who was saying that to Lori when they first met?
I wouldn't be surprised.
We've been married so many times before. I forget how many he said, but that was something that I remember. And in the indictment, it states the couple did endorse and espouse or support religious beliefs for the purpose of encouraging and or justifying the homicides. So it actually says that they're using the religion as the reasons. And Mel Stiller says 7. They think 7 times.
What are the 3 worst sins? Lustful appetite, wrath, and mind corruption. So what is the unpardonable sin in LDS? Okay, well, that's something else. Yeah, no, so I'm not quite, what are the 4 mortal sins? Lust, gluttony, avarice. Anyway, I just noticed in terms of the Jodi Arias case, fornication, I believe, was very high up there, which is why, yeah, I'm not actually going to go into it. It's a bit disgusting, but yeah, I'm not quite sure. Like, if you think about which is worse, fornication or adultery. Like, fornication is sex before marriage. Adultery is sex with somebody else that you're not married to. So, is fornication actually higher on the list than adultery? I wouldn't know. I don't know what the Mormon faith. I'm not an expert on the Mormon faith, so.
I don't know either. I know.
Julie says they should call it the. That's quite funny. Yeah, Lisa Stokes says they made their own world, therefore their own rules. The LDS Church is true; they are not. Bria, really good to see you here. It's okay that you're a bit late, but really good to see you. Tommy says, unpardonable sin is not accepting the Holy Spirit. Everything else is forgivable. So everything else is forgivable. Maybe that's what Chad said. Listen, if you've got any doubt, everything's forgivable. Literally everything is forgivable.
They were excused because they were already married, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not a religious person, so I'm the wrong person to ask about this kind of stuff. I have like faith, but I'm not any religion. And then Nate asked, when did you first realize something isn't right? And Kay says, when we found out Charles was dead in July 2019, we knew Alex and Lori, killed him because they wanted insurance money. Charles had told me recently that Lori didn't want JJ anymore. He was changing the beneficiary of his insurance to me because if something happened to him, we'd have the money to care for JJ, for his schools, to provide for him. I didn't know if he did follow through until a week later when the insurance company called me. And they shared they had found out about Charles's death from his adult son, Cole, who had received a text from Lori that his father had died. Kay initially didn't believe the news because Charles was healthy and had an active lifestyle. Larry Googled Charles's name and saw the newspaper article from Chandler, Arizona, saying he was killed the day before. Lori didn't text Kay when Charles died, but she was quick to text her about the insurance money. She texted Kay, 5 kids, no money, and the sister gets everything. That's awfully nice.
So what I think is quite interesting is if you accept that Lori didn't want JJ anymore, I'm talking about months earlier, then one of the things you can kind of consider is why not just sort of say to Larry, why not just say to them, Larry and Kay, can you take him back? You know what I mean? Like, what I'm trying to get at is if you look at it very simply, and it probably is an oversimplification, and you say, okay, I don't want this child, and I've got the choice between, because JJ was adopted, right? So giving it back to the adopted, because he was sort of the care was taken over by his grandparents, right? And they still loved him. So you could kind of say, you know, I tried my best, it didn't really work out. I'm kind of going to give him back. It's just not really working out. You know, and compared to, well, I don't really want JJ anymore, so I'm going to murder him, right? Now, but there's a ulterior motive here, and that is Laurie, I think, um, potentially, you must bear in mind this case is sub judice. We don't know what happened for a fact, and that's what the court has got to decide. But you could kind of imagine that if there was a murder, then the idea was, well, I don't want to give him away because then I wouldn't get money for him. In other words, I wouldn't get money for this lost life. If I give him away, I lose out in that insurance money. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
it was
literally like
money.
I can't give him away because if I do, then I wouldn't get this money. So I need to get rid of him the way that's going to work for me, right? I'm just
It's
saying,
horrible.
yeah, yeah. Somebody said if you're on your laptop, maybe you're not close enough to the laptop because you've got to be close to the mic of the laptop. So that might make a difference.
Trying to
I
see.
think the mic is sort of almost where the mouse is.
Well, I don't have a mouse.
Yeah, but the onboard mouse, you know,
Let me
you know
just
the
have a
mouse
look.
pad?
Yeah, it's in the back
I think if you
actually. That's
just
probably why.
sit closer to
I'll pull
the
it
laptop, it
closer.
might help. Yeah. Okay, let's just go through a couple of comments here. Lainey says, hi everyone. Janina Carter, JJ would be alive for the money alone. That's all they cared about. Mel Stiller, JJ was dollars and cents. Tommy Coyote, Eclectic SB says, I hear her fine. Okay, do you want to keep going?
Sure. I moved it a little closer to me and I'll try to talk louder, but I forget when I'm in the middle of a sentence. Kay describes her interaction with Laurie after Charles had been killed as dancing with the devil because she had to pretend to be sympathetic and believe in her when she knew Laurie was responsible for Charles's death because Laurie still had JJ. So there's that premonition. The last time they saw or heard JJ's voice was through a brief FaceTime on August 10th, 2019. Laurie didn't allow JJ to go to Charles's memorial service. We figured she was upset because I got the insurance money, but never in our wildest dreams did we think she would hurt JJ. Larry says, in 2017, I told Kay, there's something changing with Laurie. Something's not right. And she said, it's probably the stress of raising JJ. He could be a handful. And Kay says, if he's awake, he's moving. Larry says, JJ was so fun. He'd wear the left shoe on his scooter. He'd wear the left shoe out on his scooter in 7 to 10 days. We had to buy him new shoes. He'd ride around our subdivision. Everyone knew JJ. And if they didn't, he'd knock on their door and introduce himself. And if you're really okay with him, he'd go right through your front door. And Nate said, I remember the storage unit. I checked out the unit and I remember the scooter was inside, and that stood out to you. There were baby clothes and toys, all the kinds of things you take with you if your house was on fire, so mementos. And this was all in the storage unit that they weren't paying and they were going to lose everything up inside. Larry said, I never gave up hope until I saw the photograph of his body. Even though we'd been told of the possibility the kids had been murdered, I still have a hard time accepting it. Thank goodness Kay has a wonderful counselor. I've been to a few sessions too. Get help if you have trauma, even if you think you're strong. Continuing support is so important. The more we talk about it, the more therapeutic it is for us. The quality of life taken, JJ, Tylee, Charles, Tammy, what were they killed for? A little bit of money? Lust? Greed? For what?
So I think an interesting question is if, the caddies decided that this whole area is its playground, playing now with the Van Gogh shingle stuff. Sorry about that. But I think an interesting, good thing, she's just jumped off now. An interesting thing is if hypothetically, all of this is hypothetical, but if hypothetically Charles died and the insurance money did go to Laurie, do you think JJ would still have died? I think it's quite an interesting.
Say it again.
So, yeah, they basically say, what were they killed for? A little bit of money, lust, greed, for what? Now, we know that Laurie wasn't very happy when she found out that Charles had changed the insurance, and so after he died, she didn't get anything, right? So what if she did get something? Would that then have would the body count have changed? I'm just saying, you don't necessarily have to answer it. It's just quite an interesting thought, because if you think about that text, 5 kids, no money, and the sister gets everything. So what if it was 5 kids, and how much would she have inherited, or what was the insurance? $1 million or something?
I don't remember the exact amount.
$1 million or 1.5 million. So would that have made a difference? But what is quite interesting here is this notion of turning a human being into gold coins. You know what I mean? Literally, well, this person is worth that much money to me, not alive. That person, and so on. And yeah, it's pretty grim.
Seems like Laurie's spiteful because when she found out that she wasn't getting the insurance money, she wouldn't allow JJ to even go to his father's memorial service. It's like she was a spiteful.
It could also be that she was trying to stay off the radar. She didn't want to be asked any questions. Do you know what I mean? She was trying to stay out of that. I think one's got to try and answer that question. What were they killed for? And what is mentioned here is lust, ? Greed, ? And I think it's a little bit of money, ? I think it's actually all of those things. But I think those things form part of something else. And I think that something else is a fairy tale. They died in order to serve someone else's fairy tale. Someone wants their fairy tale so badly that they are willing to create a nightmare for someone else. It's the same scenario like with the Chris Watts case, is I want my fairy tale, right? I have to have my fairy tale. And in order to have my fairy tale, I've decided, and it's not irrational, but I've decided that you are a direct threat and a serious threat to me having what I want. The part that's irrational is the fact that you are a threat to me means I must kill you. That's the only way to get rid of this threat. I can't talk to you about it. I can't find another option. I can't, whatever it is. And I'm insisting on having my fairy tale. And so that's really what it is I have to have my fairy tale, and so everything else is secondary and expendable. And then they start to rationalize. So, in order to get this, I need that. But isn't that against the rules or whatever? And then it is all rationalized. And so that is what you see very often. People rationalize reality. There is reality, and then there are sub levels of it. And some reality is more true, and some of it is more related to your fairy tale. It's the fairy tale that determines the reality,
There's just so many lives that connected with the two of them that are no longer here, that are not alive anymore. And some of them even stem from before Chad. So it's just, and you don't know how those fall. Like, I'm not, it's hard. I think Lori had a sister that died and Alex was with her on her deathbed. That's red flag to me. It could be a coincidence. And then her other husband, Joe Ryan, some of the circumstances surrounding his death. It's, and then Chad also had these visions that even before he met Lori, that Tammy was going to die young. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to talk about premeditation, and I'm not using that word to say like overtly, explicitly, that is premeditation. I'm just saying having a vision that someone's going to die is a kind of premeditation. It's like I'm seeing something happen. I'm thinking about something happening before it happens, and then it does happen. It's you know what I mean?
The incident with the silent shooting that Tammy thought was a paintball gun. After I read that, I'm not sure where I read it, so I can't give it to you as a source, but I'll just share what I read, is that Chad then said that Tammy became, maybe it was, I'm not sure. Then Chad said that Tammy became a zombie when she survived that. So it was like, first it was just this innocent thing, and then he had
I actually didn't know that Tammy became a zombie. Wow.
Well, I'll have to find the article and send it to you, because I don't want to.
Can you imagine, you're sort of aware that if you're a zombie, your life's at risk. You've just sort of got that awareness, and then Chad or Lori sort of says to you, you know what, you're a zombie, and you sort of go to bed that night and you're like, oh crap, I could die. And you sort of go to them the next day and you say, I don't want to be a zombie. What can I do? I don't want to be a zombie. Can I get unzombified? Is there a way that I can come back from this? Because if you think about it, it's potentially a death sentence. So, but I mean, it sounds like it's a joke, but it's like, well, I'm a zombie. What can I do? I don't want to be a zombie. Can you help me? What do I need to do?
I think that's what Tylee felt like when her mom was calling her a zombie. I feel like that's what she was thinking. Like, she saw what happened to Charles, probably. I mean, I don't know for a fact, I guess, but I feel like at some point she wasn't an asset to the mother anymore.
I don't want to go into this in a lot of detail. I just want to sort of mention it fleetingly. There's a lot of overlapping, like the basic fabric often overlaps in a lot of different cases. And as far as I know, I'm one of the first true crime researchers to really go into it in a lot of detail. I remember when I wrote books in the beginning, my co-author said, don't do that. Like, for example, I'd be talking about Jodi Arias or whatever it was, and then I'd refer to Amanda Knox, and she said, don't do that, because there are a lot of people who don't think this about Amanda Knox, or they don't believe that or whatever. And I thought, you know, you've kind of got to either stay away from that completely or you go into that. But anyway, the one thing is, where you have a fairy tale, you invariably have a nightmare as well. You know what I mean? And you have that so powerfully in this story, where you have the fairy tale of, we are gods and we are gonna, you know, we're part of the chosen ones. That's the fairy tale. And then there's the nightmare of incinerated flesh and being buried in a pet cemetery and being in a garbage bag and this, that, and the next thing. That's the nightmare. So for someone to have a fairy tale, someone else must have a nightmare. If you take that and you apply it to Russia and Ukraine, Russia's fairy tale is, well, we want our empire back. We've got this fairy tale idea of empire. Well, someone's got to now go through the nightmare of that, you know. Also, if you take the fabric of religion, that sort of is the currency of the Laurie Vallow case, then I've just seen we've lost a couple of viewers. Just anyway, never mind. Anyway, if you take the currency of the Laurie Vallow case, it's kind of within the envelope of religion, right? But it's still dealing with fairy tales and nightmares. In the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard, I just want to see, oh, they're just saying that I lost another viewer. But anyway, there's also fabric to that, which is whatever it is. It's a fabric of other things. I suppose you could call it substance abuse or drugs is the continuous background in that whole thing, and other things, but that's the main thing. And one person's fairy tale in that fabric, like, oh, it's so wonderful having a lot of drinks, and so wonderful being high, and it's so, you know, this is such a nice way to spend my life. Well, it's a nightmare for somebody else, you know, can be a nightmare for someone else. And so what the lesson is in that is, be careful of your own fairy tale. Maybe the extent to which you are caught up in your own fairy tale is actually a nightmare to someone else, and it's not good for you and it's not good for them. Be realistic in your fairy tale. I think that's different to ambition, where you say, I want to achieve this in life. That's a practical goal, right? Fairy tales tend to apply to often things like relationships, romance, sort of very vague ideas of happiness, and to some extent, unrealistic ideas of money. How can I get money without working? How can I sort of just cheat my way to whatever I want, like instant gratification, you know? What I think is interesting with the Laurie Vallow case is it takes some of those concepts and it's like expanded. The fairy tale has gotten very, very, very big compared to the fairy tales that are normally out there. So in the Laurie Vallow fairy tale, it's like what's happening to the entire world. The whole world is coming to an end. We are gods over the world. Are we going to be in charge of whatever, 144,000? And so the bigger the fairy tale, the bigger the nightmare. You know, it's just something to think about a little bit.
Yeah, there didn't seem to be any limit to where it was going to end. I think the sacrifices that they were making for their own fairy tales was going to be at even more people's lives' expense.
Robbie Robbins says fairy tales can be gained by manipulation. I think we are all very susceptible to fairy tales. We all want to be in love. We all want to be happy. We all want to be safe and rich and living our best lives. And some people do take advantage of that, saying, this thing that you desperately want, I can give it to you. This thing that you desperately want, I can give it to you. And then it's like, okay, it's wish fulfillment. And of course, how often are those wishes really granted? Janina Carter says Laurie used religion as an excuse to get money and men, no matter the cost to anyone else. Janina, I don't know whether it's that cynical. Like, I don't know if Laurie was like this sort of mastermind going, I'm going to move these chess pieces and I'm above religion and I know exactly what I'm doing. I don't, because I think Stephanie actually told me that according to the grandparents, Laurie's still in love with Chad, right?
Nate said that, and that's in the.
Yeah. Oh, did Nate say that?
Yeah.
If Laurie's still in love with Chad, you've got to think she's still drinking the Kool-Aid. And I think
delusional.
Yeah, I don't think you can underestimate the Kool-Aid in this case. I don't think you can underestimate that. I think there's to some extent string pulling, but there's also to some extent their strings being pulled by their beliefs. And it's difficult to know where the beginning and end is of that in terms of both of them. It's quite difficult to say.
Pauline, I think that Chad's reasoning why would he want Laurie's children dead? Maybe because he didn't want the responsibility. He didn't want to be responsible for them. He didn't want the financial burden, and I think that he just wanted his freedom. I think they both did. I don't.
Faticus says we're all drinking the Kool-Aid. Well, hopefully not everybody. I'd like to think that this channel doesn't drink the Kool-Aid, and many of the people on this channel, not everyone, but many. Okay, do you want to keep going, Stephanie?
Yeah. So this session, they then turned and Nate allowed the audience to ask a couple questions. And the first question was, who's mourning Tylee? And Kay said, we do. She's JJ's big sister. She cared for him. She loved him. She mothered him. We mourn her. We mourn Tammy. We mourn everyone. There's no measurement. We'd have taken her in too. And that's just so sad.
Mm.
The next question was, do you know if Chad's kids are still supporting him? And then Nate followed that with, the last I heard, the last I heard, they are still supporting him. They're close to their father. They do visit him in jail. It's really caused a fracture with Tammy's side of the family, with those grandparents and siblings. They were all very close. The kids are not really in communication with that side of the family anymore. And that was surprising to me. I remember seeing them in an interview where they were still supporting Chad. And then because some time, then because some time went by, I guess I was just thinking that their thinking would change over time. So I guess they're visiting him in jail still, and they think that it all has to probably do, they're blaming it on probably Laurie and Alex is what they're gonna think about. And it just reminded me of the Morphew girls, and the Morphew girls are younger. These are adult children with their own children and families. So it's just surprising how much excuse or how much the heart can't bear to make those kinds of excuses for their dad, that he has no responsibility in any of this, especially learning about their mother's fate in the autopsy results.
Yeah, I must say, if you are looking, by the way, Faticus, thanks so much, and Tommy as well. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for
if you're
your
looking
Batman.
for a if you're looking for a current example of someone who is actively supporting someone, it is the Morphew girls. And I don't know, whatever your position is on that whole case, you can kind of quite clearly see, in a way, what they are seeing. And so you can kind of see that there's a dynamic between them. You know, they love their father, and they and it's basically as simple as that. They love their father, and that's their reality. And I don't know whether that's so different from Chad loves Laurie, Laurie loves Chad, and that's their reality. Also, Chris Watts loves Nicole Kessinger, and that's his reality. You know what I mean? The love sort of adults the mind to some extent. You can apply that a lot, that love is in a way where the fairy tale takes root, and it's the last place where you want to say be realistic, because it's nice to be in love in a sort of a floaty way kind of thing. You know, you want to be head over heels in love. Well, then your feet aren't on the ground, right?
Yeah.
Jen says, I'm drinking coffee. Nisi says, what a horrible position to put the children in.
Yeah.
Mel says, we need to remember the father is the master of the family. Often in these types of situations, sorry, I've got a bit of hiccups. Sorry, in these types of situations, often that is the case. In religious households, it is often the case that the father is like the patriarch kind of thing.
And then Larry responded to the audience member, what we're going through, I assume Chad's family is going through. Heartache is heartache. I wish there was more support on their side. I wish we could shake hands. We could pray together. And Kay said, we met Chad's brothers and their families, and they're devastated. It's exploded a lot of people's worlds, not just ours. Picking up the pieces is a long and arduous process. Nate shared, there are several family members who said they'll speak after the trial, and Kay said, when they're ready. And the last question that was part of this session was...
Just hold on a second before you get to that. So think about that in the context of fairy tales. You're in this happy family fabric, and you know, I'm talking about Chad's kids and whatever, and you sort of minding your own business and everything's great, and then next thing, in Kay's words, it's exploded a lot of people's worlds. So suddenly your whole world explodes. In other words, your fairy tale is gone just like that, and you realize, wow, actually this is going on for quite a while when I was thinking about something else. And then it is this process of picking up the pieces, and you're picking up the pieces in a way where you say, well, this is something I can build something realistic with. You know, like the Three Little Pigs, you want to build a house that's not going to explode or be blown over. You want to build something that's authentic and sturdy and anchored in a way that's going to, you know, I'm talking about your psychological house of cards, if you will. once it's exploded, you pick the pieces up and you try and build your next house of cards on a more sturdy foundation. It still is a house of cards. The question is, to what extent is that resonating with reality, or kind of susceptible to be blown over again by the howling winds and the howling wolf kind of thing? Okay.
I agree with the chat that the woodcocks they have such forgiving hearts. I don't know if that, I know that's a choice that Larry said he had to make. I don't know if
well,
I've done it.
the very last answer Larry gives, I don't know if it's that forgiving.
On the other side, yeah, I know it's yeah, but that's towards Chad and Lori. This is in reference to their children, and he's saying, I want to shake their hands, I want to pray with them, even though they're
Okay,
with their
to
father.
Chad's kids. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's understandable. I mean, they are innocent victims in a way to this.
Yeah. Last question from the audience member. Joe Bryan, Tylee's dad, died before Charles. Do you feel that Joe could be another victim to Lori? Kay said, I completely 100% believe there are more victims. I believe Joe was a victim. Alex was the hitman for Lori. She had him wrapped around her finger, and whatever Lori wanted, she got him to take care of. Allegedly, she got him to kill Joe, to kill Charles, and then the kids. And I don't know if he had anything to do with Tammy's death, but I believe he probably did. It's still unraveling. And Larry said, my answer to you is hell yes.
So a very weird, difficult question is, who killed Alex, or did karma just catch up with him? Because there's such a big death toll in this case, and the angel of death seems to be Alex, and then Alex is gone as well.
I think it's more likely that he was probably, I should I say what I speculate? I don't know.
Well, you can say, without mentioning names, you can say,
okay, I
whether,
speculate
yeah,
that somebody poisoned him, somebody that probably lived with him, because he was getting dark, or perhaps he saw what was coming and that maybe he took his own life. I think it's more likely the first thing, but I know that when shortly when Alex didn't feel well, because he wasn't feeling well, he had called Chad, or Chad had, I don't remember which way it was, who called who, but it was almost like Chad was saying, it's okay, it's time, like giving a blessing. So I'm not sure.
Really, did Chad say that?
Weird. Yeah, Pauline.
Because I think if there's any symptom of Alex being told you're a zombie or something in that line, then that starts to feel kind of iffy. Can you imagine if Alex was this, I mean, in the words of Kay, hitman, right? If Alex was that, and then Alex starts expressing reservations about, well, okay, that person's a zombie. I'd rather not. I don't really want to do this. Oh, you don't want to do that? Wow, you've just become a zombie, right? So if he says, I don't want to XYZ, wow, you don't want to do, well, now you're a zombie. That's tough. It's quite sad.
Yeah, I mean, it's not funny at all. It's just, this is the most, to me, insane case with all these twists and all these levels of crazy.
Again, in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing, I think an aspect that a lot of people don't know and aren't familiar with is that whole network that surrounds a celebrity that you and I are totally unaware of. And I'm talking about, you are in a system and you are either, almost like Laurie and Chad and everything, you're either on the right side of that system, in other words, you are favored, right? Or you're on the wrong side and you're not favored, right? It's a very similar thing. And so you want good publicity and so on, but make no mistake, there are all sorts of institutions and systems going on. And to the extent that you look at Chad and Laura and you say, none of this makes sense to me. Well, it doesn't make sense because you don't know the religious dynamic that's going on, right? And the same applies with Johnny and Amber. It's not like they are just people like you and me and they're doing this and that, and it's very simple. He's lying, she's lying, she's lying, he's lying, whatever. It's actually within a system that you need to understand. You need to understand that system, otherwise you're not going to understand anything. In the Chris Watts case, it's quite simple. He was really, I think lust was a very, very big factor there, in money as well. So that's quite a simple system. But and I mean, there was also a little bit of complexity in terms of his work relationship with Nicole Kessinger. That was where he got to see her and so on and so on. And you can make it more complicated, but in a way it's quite simple. In the Laurie Vallow case, that fabric that you've got to fathom is their religion. And when I read those books about Jodi Arias, you had to get to know what Travis believed in order to understand what Jodi gave up, right? Jodi wanted to be with Travis, but she couldn't just be with Travis. She had to take part in all sorts of rituals. She had to partake in a certain diet, and she had to submit herself in a certain way, which I'm not going to mention here, sexually, which was quite weird, but it was all within that psychology. And I actually know someone who's in the LDS faith, and I think it's LDS, and they're not allowed to, I think, drink coffee. They're not allowed to eat chocolates. They're not allowed to eat meat. There are all sorts of strong prescriptions, like, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. And what do you get in return for that? Well, you are God's chosen person, and you're also part of this family, and maybe people look out for you. So you give something up, and in return, you become part of a community. And that's true in all of these little situations. When you're a celebrity, you give up your privacy, but what do you get in return? Lots of things. There was something else I want to say about the fairy tale and the nightmare. Anyway, it'll come back to me. Any more comments, Stephanie?
No, but it's a little intimidating even sharing notes, because I feel like I don't even have everything straight, even though I watch a session. It's just, there's so many people involved. It's like layers
No, it is.
upon layers.
It's arguably the most complicated true crime case yet. I mean, it is very complicated.
But I appreciate the channels that are covering it, because it's important to see how something could go so far. so long.
Yeah, when I was still writing, and I'd actually identified this case as one I was going to write about, and I put together a book cover and a framework. The idea was to Nisi, member for 4 months. Thanks a lot, Nisi. The idea was to start step by step. So I thought I would write 3, 4, 5 books about it. And I thought the first book would be only about Laurie. So it would be about Laurie's backstory, Laurie's personality, the dynamics surrounding Laurie, right? And so going chronologically through Laurie's story, only Laurie's story. So obviously when JJ came into her life, when Tyler was in her life, the various marriages and so on. But in other words, you need to get to know the universe that is Laurie Vallow, right? Separately, and see how that sort of, those tentacles reach out into some aspects of this case. And so you need to go and spend the time to figure that out, figure that backstory out in detail. Once you've done that, so the next book is going to be the exact same thing, but just from Chad's perspective. How he grew up, how he was different, you know, being a, what do you call it, a grave digger, being an author. In a weird way, Chad and Laurie are like chalk and cheese. Laurie's charismatic, she's attractive, she's she thinks on her feet, she's got a lot of friends, and Chad is like introverted, kind of pudgy, not the most charismatic speaker, but maybe quite charismatic in other ways that we're not quite aware of. You know, maybe quite a good writer. I haven't really read his books, but at any time when you're going to say, I had a near-death experience and God spoke to me, some people are going to believe that, and you're immediately going to get an incredible power over that. And I want to compare that to something I read in another article, where somebody said, I think Johnny Depp gave them a hug and gave them flowers or something, and that changed her whole life. And she's never been the same after that. And so that has shaped her as a person, that singular moment. But you can be taken advantage as a result of that, out of that one moment. So, yeah. It's just interesting how we act out of our own kind of self-interest, and how that can create both something very functional and very good and affirmative, but also something that can be incredibly destructive because it's not based on reality. So you create this dream, and it's potentially going to improve your entire life, but when the wheels come off because it's no longer running on the substrate of reality, well, then it's going to crash, right? And I find that very interesting, you know, the more cases that we deal with. Think about Suzanne Morphew even. She was in a relationship with a guy with 6 kids, and she reached out to him and she loved him. Was that realistic? You know, was that kind of thing realistic? Just in terms of that.
Yeah, still married.
Yeah. Crime itself is a fairy tale of there's no accountability. It's the lack of the ability to kind of imagine what's the worst thing that could happen. So you commit a crime, but you think, well, I'll probably get away with this. But what if you don't? Well, I'm not really going to think about that too much. And a crime in itself is kind of a fairy tale. We say, I'm going to do this and get away with it. It's quite a nice fairy tale, but doesn't happen. And that tends to happen, I think, when someone has gotten away with things their whole lives anyway, but smaller things, little lies, little deceptions, little cheats here and there. And then the crime is almost like the natural conclusion of that thing. And then for the first time, somebody actually interrogates them and doesn't believe them. It's like, wow, how did this happen? People have always believed me.
Tommy said they take quotes out of the Bible to support their delusional thoughts and to justify their actions. So they're basically making up their own cult. It's a cult. They're not.
Yeah.
They're seeing themselves as God, not necessarily following God's word. They see themselves as the gods, and they're playing God with people's lives.
But I mean, that's true of even good people. You have good people taking quotes out the Bible to support their position. And you've got so many different variations of interpretation. You've got the Methodists, you've got the Anglicans, you've got the Lutherans, and so on and so on and so on. Each one emphasizes a different part. So each one has a different religious reality, if you will, or religious opinion, if you will, based on the quotes that they emphasize. Quite interesting.
Yeah. Most people use it to support good, not evil. Their interpretations to support. You want me to start on the next one? Or did you want to, are you tired?
No, keep going. Keep going.
Okay. The next session was a Q&A. It was only actually a 20-minute segment. And it was Larry and Kay Woodcock, Nate Eaton, and they were interviewed by Susan Hendricks, who is a news anchor for HLN, and she asked them some questions, and she had her laptop out and she was pulling some questions from people that were viewing virtually, kind of like what Cotton started. And the first thing Kay says, we're determined Lori and Chad are not going to kill us too. They're not going to take our lives too. And when she said that, she knows that they're behind bars, but that, I think it wasn't not just the physical part that she was like their physical safety. She was thinking also, she was expressing their emotional well-being.
Mm.
And they talked about their grandkids and how much they had to live for. And the first question that she asked was, how can we honor your grandson and his sister? And Kay said, it's only just recently that we've been able to function, and she said, normally, whatever that is. We plan on putting together a nonprofit organization to help the school JJ attended in Arizona. We haven't put it all together. Really, most of our energy has gone to just getting through this. Now we'll begin working on that. So she was sharing future plans, but it's nothing that is in the works.
I remember way back when the case was still sort of developing and we didn't know all the answers, or we knew far less than we know now. I remember there was sort of a documentary there were actually a couple of documentaries, and Kay and Larry were sort of at the center of them. And there were certain things taking place. And I remember thinking, I don't know if it's because they were on camera, but I just remember thinking, you guys are way too cheerful and way too positive and way too optimistic for what's waiting for you, right? I just remember thinking that. At that point, they hadn't found anything and whatever, but I just remember thinking, and I sort of wondered, is it because you're on camera or what? But I sort of thought, there's going to be a moment where reality is going to obviously hit you like a frying pan, but it hasn't hit you yet. And I can't quite remember when it happened, but I think it was when they appeared in court and Laurie appeared in court. And Laurie, I think, just said, I don't think Laurie said anything. Laurie appeared in court to, what's the word? I think it was based around where, like, where are your kids or whatever, and she didn't say anything. And I think that's when hope finally fizzled out. It was like, this isn't good. But I mean, it was clear that this wasn't good for a long time.
Yeah.
But that obviously held out hope, because obviously you want to believe that things are okay. But do you remember that, Stefan? Do you remember?
I do, and I remember you actually, maybe it was on Patreon, writing a post about it, like how can they not see? And I just remember thinking they're just in self-preservation mode with hope until it is hopeless. And at that point, I think that they, as Larry shared, they were given the possibility that the children were murdered. Like, the investigators told them that, and they had to put that out just to get by, because they were hoping that the children were somewhere in some prepper community being sheltered. And it's easier to say when you're not directly in it and it's not your loved ones that you can go there with your mind. But I do remember writing that.
If you think about something like climbing Mount Everest, that entire enterprise is based on hope. And to the extent that it's based on more hope than on preparation, or more hope than reality, you're going to get into serious, serious trouble. Do you remember the movie The Dark Knight Rises? Where Batman is now Bruce Wayne, he gets thrown into this almost like an underground tower, sort of underground tunnel. And Bane says to him, now you're going to experience real despair, because all you've got to do is look up and there's the sky, and all you've got to do is climb up out of this hole that you're in towards the light, right? And it's so easy. All you've got to do is just climb up out of the hole to the light and get out. It's as simple as that. And he said, but now you're going to experience real despair, meaning you have this hope that is waiting for you all the time, except it's unattainable. The question is that hope realistic? And you've got to be careful with hope, that hope isn't a fairy tale. Is the thing that you're hoping for a fairy tale, or is the thing that you're hoping for turning your life actually into a nightmare? You're hoping that your marriage doesn't end, or you're hoping that someone's not cheating on you, or you're hoping that you don't have cancer, or you're hoping this or whatever. You've got to be in the real world, and the real world can feel like a less pleasant place than another place, but maybe it's not. I mean, especially if you've been living in a dream world, the real world, like Neo in the Matrix, is a less pleasant place, because you're not used to living in the real world. But the real world is the only place where you can actually be effective. All the stuff you do in fairy tale worlds doesn't last. It eventually fizzles away. What you do in the real world is real. What you do in fairy tales isn't real. It all goes up in smoke, kind of thing. And I don't want to say that without sympathy and compassion, because in a situation like this, you can totally understand. You do want this young child to be, you are going to hope that this child is alive. But think about it from the opposite perspective. if you, Laurie, and if you, Chad, and maybe Alex as well, and if you have done something, then as long as someone's hoping that you didn't, it favors you. Their nightmare becomes your fairy tale made manifest. In other words, someone else hoping against reality means they get away with something if they did do something. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's just taking this idea of hope, which we all are kind of susceptible to. We're all susceptible to hoping for something. I'm hoping to. I was swimming earlier tonight in gym, and I was saying that I'm hoping to beat my brother in triathlon this year or the next, and the guy burst out laughing. And I kind of stopped him and I said, that's a slap in the face. And he said, yeah, but your brother is so fit and strong, and you're not bad, but you know, and I said, I'm aware, I know exactly how much he weighs and how much I weigh. But what I'm trying to get at is, to the extent that you know how unrealistic your hoping and fairy tale is, it is realistic, if that makes sense. So you can have things that you aspire to. You just need to anchor them in reality and say, well, you're prepared to do the work. Are you prepared to, just beyond the daydreaming, are you prepared to put in the effort? Are you prepared to navigate reality to the reality that you want?
I don't think that they were prepared for reality. So I think they've
Yeah.
been making up excuses. I could see myself doing that if my child or someone I love was missing. I would say, well, they're probably they must be at college, or I could think of myself going to these excuses rather than to think the worst, and then the worst is the worst ever.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell case and an interview with the Woodcocks, JJ Vallow's grandparents, and Nate Eaton, the journalist, investigative journalist. The next question says, the latest development is that Chad and Lori will be tried together. Does this make you glad you don't have to go through the whole thing twice? Kay said, absolutely. Let's just get through. Just get it through. Rip the Band-Aid off and do it one time, and let's move on. Now, I'm not so sure that that is what's going to happen. But that, I know the judge said that they're going to be tried together. But it seems that one of them is in January and one of them is still in October, as far as I know. So they got to come to some agreement there.
I know Lori wants to be tried with Chad.
Yeah.
I remember going through a little bit of the information around that, but I'm a little bit fuzzy on it. I think she said something about she's mentally fragile or something like that, so she needs to be with Chad or something like that. And also, I mean, something that's absolutely undeniable is Lori doesn't really have any money. Chad kind of sold his property and through that is retaining prior. But obviously it benefits Lori to sort of associate herself with Chad, because then she gets this expensive defense lawyer that is obviously got to look into her interests as well if she's in the court with him, with his client, right?
Yeah. So Chad,
I don't know whether, I mean, this is an open question. Let's ask Chad, see what they think about this. You as well, Stephanie. Do you think Chad just like on its own, do you think Chad wants to be tried with Laurie present? And then also, if you were Chad's lawyer, if you were John Pryor, would you want Laurie present when Chad is being, in other words, would you want Chad associated with Laurie in terms of a trial?
No.
What do you guys say?
What do you? Stargirl says no.
Stargirl says no, Nisi says no, and no. Yeah.
And
So
Chad
I think
still,
it's good for Laurie, but it's not, it can only benefit Laurie. I don't know if it's going to be very good for Chad. I do think what makes sense is to throw Alex under the bus for everything, for Chad and Laurie to say, Alex did this. What happened there? Alex did that.
that's
Right?
partially the reason why I think that maybe Alex was a zombie.
Mm. Yeah.
Now he can be they can blame everything on Alex. I mean, their responsibility on him too. And if you
What I
think
think
about
is
it,
also quite interesting with Alex is arguably the perception that Laurie uses people. Like, did Laurie use Alex for her own ends, right? And then you could also say, in this situation we're in right now, is Laurie trying to use Chad to benefit herself? I'm talking about strictly speaking in the legal game that we're in. Is that the only card she's got to play? Is that she needs to be defended by Chad's lawyer, essentially? And it's good for her, but it's not good for Chad. So it's like you could kind of almost turn this into a sort of a very profound moment and say, Laurie, if you really love Chad, you would let him be tried alone, and maybe he would actually even beat the charges. So put yourself aside and let Chad be tried. Don't attach yourself to him because it could actually be detrimental to him. Laurie, do the right thing. Sacrifice yourself or something like that. And it's quite interesting that you kind of have this idea that she is it's like self-preservation, right? It's yeah.
Okay, let's see. Question: do the investigators keep you in the loop, or do you learn a similar amount to what we know publicly? Kay said, we know some details, but we can't share some things. We don't ask. There's no need to know them right now. We know certain things, and they're devastating. The next question. Laurie's mental state has been called into question. Larry, your thoughts on that? And Larry says she's never been incompetent. And then Kay said, that's our opinion. And I agree. I agree with Larry.
I must say, I find that very interesting how certain they are, how absolutely clear it is to them. I find that very interesting.
Yeah.
In other words, I think what they're suggesting is that the whole incompetency thing has been a ruse, has been an act, has been a sham on top of another sham.
Do you remember, or maybe anybody in chat, when Laurie met Chad? Like what around like a year, like what year she met Chad? I could look it up, but I'm just curious if anybody knows.
It's quite a tough one. I think she knew him for about 2 years or something, and she met him. She started reading his books, then met him, and then participated on like a podcast with him. I'm not quite sure what the answer is to that. Good question.
So the kids were murdered in 2019. So I'm just wondering when she met Chad.
She met him sometime in 2018.
Okay. That's
So
interesting. Okay. I was wondering because Larry said in the last session that he noticed a change in Lori in 2017. So I was kind of wondering if it correlated when she started reading his.
yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure she read him before she met him.
Yeah.
You know, I've got another link here that says according to the East Idaho News, Lori met Chad Daybell in 2018 when he was teaching an evening class at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which she attended. So I now remember that. He was basically giving a sermon or whatever,
Yeah.
and she was part of the congregation. Obviously, in a situation like that, he's like a leader, and she is like, wow, I read your books and you're amazing, whatever.
Right.
They became close immediately, and from there they traveled together to a religious conference in St. George, Utah, where Chad gave talks on his books. And then it says here they spoke daily from the time of their first meeting. So the moment they met, it was like some kind of fireworks, probably both ways in some ways.
Yeah.
And then they just corresponded, communicated from then onwards. So basically, this whole thing lasted arguably a year, maybe a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question, Nate, what has it been like for you working on this the past 2 years? What's been the most surprising or shocking? Nate answers, for me, the part that hit me more emotionally than anything was when the children were found in Chad Daybell's backyard. Idaho is a very vast place. They could have been anywhere and never have been found. And they were right there at his house. And then we learned of the conditions of their bodies. It was just crushing. What did you think
No, that
when the news came out and they were digging in the backyard? Were you surprised they were in the backyard? Like, I mean, I know now we know about the text about the raccoon and the shot that was heard and the billowing smoke that they saw from the sky. But
it's quite difficult to answer that question because I can't. It's difficult to think back. I remember they searched the backyard and didn't find anything. Do you remember that? Whoa, my stomach's really grumbling.
No, I don't remember them searching.
It could also be that they searched and we didn't know what they found for a while.
It was a couple.
Right?
Yeah, it was a couple.
So I think if I remember correctly, I thought this is a very strong sign that they did find something. It wasn't like, you know what I mean. And I think when the news came out that there was a pet cemetery in the property, I was like,
yeah,
that's it. Yeah,
and that he was a gravedigger.
Yeah.
That was
to me it made sense when they were digging on the property. I was like, jeepers, he's a grave digger and there's a graveyard on his property. Whoa. Yeah. So
yeah.
I did strongly suspect it before it came out officially that they had found, if you remember correctly, it went something like this. There was first news in the media that they were searching the property, right? And nobody, the authorities weren't saying what was going on or what they found. It was just the visuals. They're searching and they're searching whatever.
Yes.
And then you saw little cordoned off areas and a little tent, and you saw that bobcat and by the tree, and right. And then later on, like much later on, I think they said to something like human remains were found, but they can't say whose human remains they were, right? That was like the next step. And then the third one
They have an
was
anthropologist come, a forensic anthropologist. Yeah.
And then I think the third one was something like they identified the burnt remains as being belonging to a female. Remember that?
Yeah.
And then they also found that the hair, when they cut the one bag open, it sort of had, it was like a white plastic and black plastic that had white stones over it. When they cut that bag open, there was this, I think, sort of blonde hair or whatever. And then that was also indicative of, you know, what. So there was sort of a process. It wasn't just like, you know, the way that the information came out was sort of gradually.
Not there yet said, why do you think they chose to bury them in the yard?
Well, first of all, we don't know that for a fact. We don't know who buried them. But anyway, I'll answer that question at sort of on merit. I think it's for the same reason Chris Watts chose his burial ground. It's because even if someone's not alive, the person responsible for taking their life wants to maintain some kind of custody over their remains. They want to be able to take care of those remains, if I can put it that way, right?
Keep an eye on them.
In Chris Watts's case, he probably thought the remoteness and the fact that it was access controlled was going to prevent accidental discovery, right? You know what I mean? Someone stumbling on that. He goes to all that effort, then he leaves the bed sheet out in the open. Anyway, in the Laurie Vallow thing, you're going to know if someone comes onto your property. And there was another case, I can't quite remember. I can visualize it, I just can't remember the details, but there was a woman who was like, seemed like this harmless old lady, and she took in sort of poor people and poisoned them and murdered them, and I think she ended up killing 6, 7, 8 people and buried all of them in her backyard. And that's, you know, the best place to have custody over those remains where they're not going to wash up somewhere. That's really the main reason, is to have control over evidence that you don't want to get into, you know, into the wrong hands. I think that question is very interesting in terms of the Madeleine McCann case. Someone actually said to me today, oh, so are you going to have to write a book about Christian Bruckner? He did it. So I said, I think that it was the abduction of a dead child. And the same, and I have written books about this, where can you take a dead child at a holiday resort? Now, bear in mind, you're not even in your own country, right? You're not even in your own country. You're not even, you're staying in a hotel, so you don't really have control over any of those properties in that area. And so the question theoretically arises, what kind of control could you try to get in a foreign country? And I try and address that in the books that I wrote. But the whole thing is, you do want to have a kind of a control. In some cases, it's like remote control. Someone is buried somewhere and you know where it is. And in other cases, sort of right under your nose.
Larry comments, at 65 years old, I was blessed to have JJ come into our lives as a baby. We all go through defining moments in our lives. We got a special needs baby in our lives, and it really was life-changing. I'll never forget the first night we had him. Kay had given him a bath. He was very unsettled. I remember how I used to coddle my children when they were babies. So I took JJ, I undid my robe and laid him in his diaper on my chest. He'd been in an incubator, and that night he'd gotten to be held for the first time. That moment in my life bonded me with JJ. And that when Larry shares these memories, like with JJ on his scooter and bringing this preemie home that had been born to a parent that was, I think, on drugs at the time, it's just, it makes him more real, just like the videos we see in of Bella and Cece, you know, how you see those images and hearing his memories, it just breaks my heart.
Yeah.
They love JJ so much. The next question was, is there any sense that Lori and Chad might turn on each other, or is the sense that they're sticking together? And this is where Nate
Good
said,
question.
Well, I've heard that Lori's still madly in love with Chad and wants to go to court and to hold his hand. Unclear what Chad's feelings are, but I imagine that'll be quite a trial if they're tried together and stuff comes out. Then they have to deal with that in the courthouse. Chad's attorney has already fought to get it severed. The judge denied it. Now that Lori is competent, I imagine her attorney will fight for that same thing, but we'll see. So when I initially listened to that, I was surprised that Lori's still madly, that they've heard that Lori's still madly in love with Chad. But your point of her being all about Lori and what's best for Lori, it makes sense that she's trying to remain all loyal and goo-goo-eyed for him because it's in her best interest.
Yeah.
So
I also think it's interesting, sorry to interrupt, I think it's interesting that Nate says it's unclear what Chad's feelings are. I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
It kind of gives you the idea that Chad might be starting to have second thoughts, or reality might be, you know, you might be thinking, I've got this lawyer and I stand a better chance, so I'm going to be, you know, I'm going to, how do they put it? I'm going to be in it all by myself, kind of thing. How does that saying go?
Sorry, I was laughing at what Mel Stiller said.
What did he say?
Compared to Lori, Chad is cold, lumpy oatmeal with no raisins, and his writing is atrocious, Nick.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Special about either one of them, but that made me laugh. I'm sorry, what did you say, Nick?
I remember thinking when I was going to research the series of books that I was going to have to read Chad's books, and I was like, I really don't want to. I really don't want to do that.
Yeah. I know a couple patrons that have, or people that have, and they're nothing worth reading. I mean, it's interesting because you can learn more about him and his thinking and thought process. But I did go into his
blogs, and where he talks about his near-death experiences, and I think it is interesting looking at the titles of the books and how he almost self-radicalizes. So I think the trajectory of, you don't need to necessarily read the books to know this book's about that one's even more fundamental, you know, and you know, I can tell you on YouTube that there's a certain amount of incentive to I'm just saying that you can go along a certain route and you go along, and then you might find, wow, I can actually do far better if I go into conspiracies, or I can go do far better if I go into just shocking, like shock this, shock that, whatever. So I'll give you an example. I was covering the Alec Baldwin thing, and if I really wanted to do the shocking thing, I could have sort of gravitated to the moment that Helena is taken out of the church. Do you know what I mean? That footage.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't do that because I thought it's just inappropriate. It's like vultures. But there definitely are YouTubers who will, without blinking, they'll gravitate exactly that and it'll be like, this is the money shot kind of thing. And that's why I try not to do that. Some of the things you need to address, like 911 calls and whatever, but there's certain things that I think you need to say that is crossing a line. That's not appropriate. Yeah.
Okay, next question. Did Charles's kids reach out to get justice for their dad? Nate, they've been quiet. They've not wanted to be in the public eye. They're grieving in their own way. Kay says, they've been active behind the scenes and they're going to see this through as well. They love their dad and they love JJ. Oh, thanks, Nisi. Thank you for being here for us too.
Thanks, Nisi. That's really kind of you.
Very sweet.
We are in the end game of this live, probably another 5 minutes or so. I think you've got to give your kids dinner, hey?
I think my husband is actually bringing Chinese food home because I told him I was busy.
Okay. Well, we've only got one question left. So.
Yeah, he's not home yet, but I did say about 6. So,
but I actually did say to Stephanie, we must do it under 2 hours, and we coming. I think we're going to make it. Yeah.
Okay. And then the last question was a repeat of the last session, but with a more in-depth answer. Thanks, Susan Becker. Aw.
Thanks, Susan. Thanks very much. Yoo-hoo.
Aw, thanks, Jen H. I love seeing your live when you're moderating on your channels too.
Mel Stiller says, I've never read any of Chad's so-called books, but I heard someone read One Foot in the Grave. Okay. Interesting title.
Yeah. So the question is, the trial is upon us. What do you want the punishment to be? And again, Kay shares, I'm absolutely okay with them both getting the death penalty. And then Larry shares, I've been angry, and on many occasions, Kay's had to calm me down because not only did I want the death penalty, I don't know, can I say this stuff? I think it's okay, right? I wanted to be the one to pull the switch, do the injection, or pull the trigger. And I admit it wholeheartedly because they took something so special from us. I had to quit being a man to the point I wanted physical revenge, just to be able to let this go. I pray for Chad's children, Chad's brothers and sister. I pray for his mom and dad and so many other people involved in this. And it gets easier the longer I pray, the longer Kay and I talk about it. Now it's not about revenge. Do I want revenge? Yes, I do. That hasn't gone away. But I've come to accept that it's time for the court system to do it their way. I thought that was...
Yeah, I must say that was pretty authentic, admitting those strong feelings, and that is very human to feel that way, and the fact that he can say that is, I commend him for that, definitely.
Yeah.
I've got to say, if you ask me that question, the trial is upon us. What do you want the punishment to be? I would say, is it? Is the trial upon us? Isn't it like 6 months away now, kind of thing? I mean,
Yeah.
I was covering this
hope-
case quite intently, and then it just got so red tapey that I was like, oh, I can't deal with these delays, and nothing's really happening. And now exactly the same things happened with Barry Morphew. You know, like you cover it, you get you absorb it, and you get totally immersed in it, and then it just doesn't go anywhere. You know.
You know what I'm going to
I'm
have
not
to start
saying,
doing is
yeah,
if and when it does, the prosecutors do try to get, I don't know what the wording is, but if it does go to trial, I'm grateful for your deep dive with that affidavit, because I'm going to have to, at that point, start at the first episode and
yeah.
re-listen, because it was so fresh in our minds.
Yeah, I've got to say, I would have imagined that if what the prosecution was saying was legitimate and reliable, you know, it kind of sounded like it was imminent that they were going to find Suzanne's remains, right?
I
And
don't
how
think
long
we
ago
go
was
there
that?
now. Is
Yeah,
this?
no, I mean, so like to me, I definitely wonder whether was that thumbsucked, that whole story that we're about to find her remains, because you've heard nothing. You know, like you would think that they would say, we are searching, we are doing this, we have found this, or whatever. Absolutely nothing. And now you can't blame the snow. We're almost at the end of May.
Yeah, that's
we
what I was
almost
gonna say. There's no snow.
So that makes me feel very disappointed, and like, is there going to be a trial in the fullness of time?
Yeah, I hope so.
That's definitely disappointing. So in terms of this question, if I had to answer it, the trial is upon us, what do you want the punishment to be? I would have just said, thank goodness there's a trial, because we didn't get a trial in so many cases now. Chris Watts, Barry Morphew, Letitia Stork, just been on and on. Gabby Petito, no cases, right? Alec Baldwin even as well, although that's more recent. So I think there will be a trial in the Laurie Vallow case, but looks like it's 6 months from now. So for me, the fact that there's a trial at all seems to be like this incredible moment that you do cartwheels and cheerlead. Wow, a trial is actually happening. That in itself seems to be a miracle. What do you want the punishment to be? Let's just get the trial underway and get to the verdict. That'll be something, you know.
Pauline says they are getting snow in the mountains in Colorado today.
Wow.
So I stand corrected. But you wonder, if they have these leads, why didn't they have an opportunity to look in this mine shaft near the house 6 months prior, or the season before?
I kind of get the feeling that while the trial was underway, and with the benefit of hindsight, and because bear in mind, when you look at so we're talking a little bit about, for those who are not sure what you're talking about, we're talking about the Morphew case. Right at the end of the affidavit narrative, this is really dealing with I think the first week of May 2021, right? When they reached that point, they were talking about the bobcat. I don't know if you remember that. They're talking about even Barry moving his foot over the bobcat and whatever. And so I think it's taken this long for them to kind of think about the bobcat, and also to think about other things. And I just think either they're playing their cards very close to their chest, which they did in the beginning, in the beginning of the Morphy case, we just heard absolutely nothing from law enforcement for months on end. I don't know whether we're going back to that phase. It's just hard to say. I guess time will tell. But yeah, it just feels like just getting to the point where there's a trial in America is like something to celebrate, you know, and then you have a trial like Depp versus Heard, and it's like,
it seems like it's not the norm anymore for things to actually get to
yeah,
trial, at least in the cases
yeah,
we've been analyzing.
yeah. Pauline says the snow won't stick where he lives in Denver, but the mountains, there's a snowstorm warning. Okay. I know there's a very, very high mountain sort of in that area, Pikes Peak, which is very, very high, and very high mountains get snow, even if it's, you know.
I am gonna have to go soon. So any last thoughts? Sorry.
Just looking through the comments here. Nisi's worried about the gators.
So I also have notes on the Delphi case if people are interested in. I heard Kelsey German speak two different sessions. So and a Q&A, so there will be 3 write-ups. I gave you 1. I have 2 to still do.
And you were there, you attended that?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yes. And then you can let me know if there's other ones you want me to talk about, the Casey Anthony, the BTK, the Long Island serial killer. Those are all ones I attended that were really interesting.
Well, if you up for all of those, that would be great. I mean, Casey Anthony,
Sure.
BTK, definitely, yeah.
But I'll probably do Delphi next because I did one of the write-ups already and it's fresh in my mind.
I need to continue uploading treachery chapters. I'm sorry, I was a bit, I did some, and I just got really caught up in the Depp case, but I'm sort of clearing my desk a bit.
I'm gonna re-listen again. I'm gonna re-listen. I think I'm gonna wait. I think I'm gonna wait till, you know, whenever it's completed, give it another thorough listen, and then I can give my review and it'll be fresh.
Cool.
So far, it's super good.
Thanks very much for making it today, and I'm probably going to do Van Gogh letters back to back tomorrow and the next day because we missed Wednesday. So, because I really want to get to the Morinage and I kind of want to move forward a little bit. So I'll probably do Van Gogh letters Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
I actually thought of doing Depp versus Heard, going through the 14 allegations, but although I think it's technically a good time to do it because I'd rather do that before the verdict in the trial, I'm just really tired of the stuff going on. And although I want to address that, I think I'm rather just going to, it's not something I like doing, but I'll wait for the verdict and then share what my thoughts were before the verdict, but ultimately after the verdict, kind of thing.
Takes a lot of energy, mental energy with the case.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you for those of you who stayed with us.
Yeah, thanks for all the super chats. Thanks for those who are here still right now. Nisi, thanks a lot. I don't know if Bria's still here. Jean Karras. Also, thanks for the super chats and all our members. Are there any new members today? I'll probably see you guys tomorrow if so. But Nan Sullivan, Jen H, pleasure. A couple of new names, but good seeing you guys here. And stay tuned for more CrimeCon. And yeah. Stay tuned for more CrimeCon over the next couple of maybe Fridays. we've probably got 3 or 4 more to come. I think next week's will be particularly interesting on the Delphi case. I've always had a particular view, and Stephanie's was a little bit different. So we'll talk about where we are, you know, in terms of when you came back from CrimeCon, how did that affect your opinion compared to when you went in terms of the Delphi case?
Yeah, they were good sessions. They were really good. So this one was more just me taking notes, and when I watched, I couldn't be as insightful with things I noticed, but the other ones are really good.
If you think about certain cases like Vicky White, that was like 11 days. It sort of got very, very high profile, and now it's gone. And, you know, kind of understandably, because the one guy's captured and the other one, you know, Vicky died, right? But how that kind of got resolved and it's done. And then you have cases like, I'm going to let you go now, Stephanie. And then you have cases like Gabby Petito, which had a bit of a longer lifespan, 2-3 months, right? And then, although it's still sort of continuing, it was kind of eventually over after 2-3 months. And then you have Barry Morphew, which stretches over years. It's further along than the Laurie Vallow case. That one's stretching over even more time. And then you have something like the Delphi case, where it's like 5 years have gone by. What's going to happen? Is Summer Wells going to go that route? I mean, we're approaching the 1-year anniversary of Summer Wells. Is Summer Wells going to become Delphi?
Feels like it.
Yeah.
Sorry that you could read my body language. My husband's home and my kids are hungry.
Okay, well, we over our 2-hour deadline anyway, so I'm going to say thank you to you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Great job, and always nice presenting with you. Definitely a nice change. Definitely a nice change of pace.
For having me and for inviting me.
Okay, so thanks everyone. Have a great dinner, Stephanie, you and your family, and everyone else, wherever you are. Have a good weekend. If I do see you, it'll be Van Gogh letters tomorrow and Sunday. So look out for that. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Cheers, eh?
Cheers.